you have to understand your audience to be able to serve them. And it's more, well, before it was a direct way. You had data and you were able to verify it. Now it's indirect. It's about putting hypotheses about funnel, who you think they are, putting those funnel in place and see if it will work. You might be wrong. Doesn't matter. It is learning if you are wrong.
Welcome to Mobile Growth and Pancakes, a podcast by StoreMaven. We break down how and why mobile apps grow. In each episode, we invite a mobile growth expert onto the show to break down a specific mobile growth strategy, how it worked, why it worked, and what they would do differently. I'm your host, Esther Schatz.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Mobile Growth and Pancakes. I'm your host, Jonathan Fishman. I'm VP Marketing at StoreMaven. And today I'm really excited to be here with Raphaël, Head of Growth at Music World Media. Hey, Raphaël.
Hello, Jonathan.
Hey.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. Do you want to introduce yourself a bit and to talk a bit about the company?
Yeah. So to introduce myself very quickly. So I am the Head of Growth at Music World Media. I'll come to my kind of scope currently, but I'm coming from close to be 15 years now in mainly video gaming. I've worked a lot on AAA and big brands and big publishers and big titles, and came to mobile almost 3 years ago and made kind of my reconversion to mobile and came to that. And yeah, I've been through position previously where I had the responsibility of managing marketing and business department in a casual publisher. And today, yeah, I'm the head of growth at MWM Music World Media. Here I manage everything that touch acquisition and revenues, and it includes, of course, user acquisition, marketing, ASO, CRM, community management, customer support, content and monetization. So both ad monetization and in-app.
Cool. And can you walk us a bit through what MWM do? What kind of apps do you have?
Yes. So as our name say, we come from music. We are a very big actor in the music apps, part of the top ones. If you exclude the very big ones like Spotify and things like that are in streaming or podcast, because it's a very different business from us doing apps. We are part of the biggest one regarding music. So we have a bunch of apps regarding that all around music, in between DJ mixing apps like DJing. We have, of course, beatbox apps like BeatLooper and Beatmaker Pro. We have as well learning apps to learn instruments for guitar, drums, piano. We have as well utilities like Guitar Tuner to tune your guitar, bass, ukulele. We have metronome, bass boosters, lots of utilities around music and sounds and for musicians as well, no matter if they are pro or amateurs. And that's kind of where we are coming from, where our name is coming from. And as you might have seen, we have had a big fundraise last year of 50 million. So we are currently scaling a lot in terms of resources, but as well in terms of product, but as well in terms of additional transversal. So we are moving across now creativity as a whole, considering, of course, music as a creativity PR, but we are adding into that hobbies. We have apps regarding puzzle, coloring, canvas, pixel canvas, and things like that. We have as well photo editing, things like you put your photo, you have filters, you put yourself as a baby, a monkey, and things like that, pretty handy. And we have as well the apps around video editing. It's quite an interesting app where you can upload your videos from your holidays. You choose a sound, and then there's an algorithm that will match your videos with the sound and make a montage for you. Which is pretty convenient for people not being professional with Premiere. So that's roughly what we have. And we have on top of that as well, a small team of 16 people doing games. And they are training and growing in hyper casual, but we are evolving towards casual in the coming months. And of course, focusing as well on music games because this is where we are coming from. We have lots of techs in terms of music serving and sound serving that will help us make great music games. So the whole purpose, of course, being growing like any company, but as well building an ecosystem and a transversal ecosystem, because we strongly believe that in the world of creativity, people are the same, and it's pretty broad and can switch to entertainment as well to some extent.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So today we want to talk a bit about the challenges of user acquisition. We're about to end 2021 soon. And we're going to kick off 2022 with a ton of new challenges that has been playing out for some time now, but are like kicking off to high gear right now. So one of them is, of course, what's been happening for the past few months with Apple and starting to enforce the ATT framework and the deprecation of the IDFA. Or the access or the ability to share the IDFA with ad networks or with MMPs, and SK ad network, of course. And now with iOS 15, the addition of a lot of new App Store capabilities like custom product pages, in-app events, and a lot of tools that can affect user acquisition to a very in a very big way. So let's start with, first of all, the strategy of the company, because that really got me interested. Is that part of like a way to say we're going very broad and going into hyper casual and utilities and apps that basically do not rely so much on like a tiny fraction of the audience that are going to be the whales in what we see in some games or even subscription apps? Is that like a way to basically just to go broad because that's what's going to be available in terms of targeting in the next year or so? Yeah,
I would say it is a very complex things to assess because on one way, you have two parameters. You have, of course, this part of privacy coming over with, of course, Apple doing their changes with iOS 14 and especially iOS 14.5. There are some signs, of course, of Google that will, to some extent, align on that. So losing kind of accuracy on the way we target people. And we were on the trend previously about trying to target accurately, proposing what the people were willing to hear to promote your app in the right way, and proposing something that is not intrusive and aggressive. And we are going backward. And on the other side, we have as well elements coming from the major players of media and acquisition, trying to as well them automatize their universe and having stronger and stronger algorithm for you to micromanage your campaign less and less. And we have seen that from one part, removing data and accuracy from your campaign and targeting destroyed the second part. And there has been weird events, and of course there's been a depreciation of the performance of the campaign on one side, but there has been as well challenges about tracking from what we have lost in tracking, and there's been, of course, now a big part of all the acquisition, especially on iOS, goes into organic, and it's pretty hard to attribute it because we have done a bunch of tests to try to identify kind of the organic uplift and see if there was difference in between channels in terms of IDFA adoption rate from the users. And the problem where it gets complex is that it depends as we are further away from the targeting possibilities and knowing exactly what we were doing in the past, saying, yeah, we know they are of that age, they like that, or they do that, and we were able to really segment them and be precise. As we can't really do that, then there are definitely issues about being able to target people and get them in the right way, but as well identify the right uplift. We have done tests, I said, on different channels, and basically depending on the product, depending on the countries, the IDFA adoption rate are very, very different because you don't know who you target. It's not like you target whales or early adopters or people like that, and you knew, and then you could transfer it. So it brings so much noise that you can't really model it exactly. So you can extrapolate it, but it's hard. So what now it's more, when before you were doing UA, you had your target about break-even profitability, and you were like, I want to break even by the time so I can make benefit out of it. That's not something you can do anymore. It's more about trying to get the closer as possible to profitability with what you can track, knowing that as there's at least 50% you can track, it gets above it, but you can't be very...
So what's your plan on, like, how are you currently measuring or attempting to measure what used to be like the return on ad spend that was pretty accurate, I would say?
Yeah, ROAS is still an indicator, but it's not as accurate before. So it is kind of a mix of bringing some holistic view about that and trying, especially for iOS, trying to have kind of a mixing both. On one side, having something accurate about keeping still the ROAS, knowing that you don't track all the users you are attracting with your campaign. And sometimes there's as well the delay in attribution that sometimes does a weird thing. And then on top of that, you can have some channels that are still kind of invoicing and invoicing and putting your budget with the delay of attribution, because it will count what has been attributed. And so there are delays, and it brings lots of nodes. So you still kind of try to be somehow profitable or close to be. And what we do is that I design and decide and say, those campaigns on this product for iOS should have by that time a certain percentage of ROAS. And then on the other side, we as well keep the big picture, saying we invest a certain amount of money for a certain amount of people of a certain value. And then you keep the high picture of saying, it's hard to say if they are purely organic, coming from organic, if they are organic, not organic, being paid, or whoever else. It's hard to say. So you need to keep the big picture and come back to, let's say, more of a traditional marketing way of seeing things, where you do branding and you do different campaigns like TV, like branding campaign, display outside and things like that. And you have kind of an holistic view of, as long as everything works out and you have the results, it's all right, even if some stuff is not very efficient because you can't really accurately measure it. So it's more about mixing both, and as well on the other side, which is my part, it's more about modeling the performance of the product, meaning performance in terms of revenue for product. It's based on the audience and the monetization you get on the audience. So basically, if we grow the audience with a certain investment, then we should grow the revenue and see how it evolves. And yeah, it's kind of a mix of keeping a bit of the performance, because you still need it for the UA manager and the UA people, because they need performance measurement to be able to track their impact, and they need it. They can't do with holistic. It doesn't work, it doesn't match, but you still need on a higher level to keep a view of the holistic model. But it's not as good as it was before and not as clear, but that's the best option you have.
So in terms of tech and your data stack, what are those UA managers using right now? They're still relying on MMPs, or are you trying to build your own BI system? Are you looking at data coming in from the App Store with the new data that they're adding there?
So we have both. So they still rely on MMPs. We have as well checked kind of the Facebook and Google models, because they tend to over attribute a bit. But lately we have checked, because they do modeling of the overall impact and installs they have brought, which is different from the MMPs, and include to some extent the organic uplift. From the tests we've done, the Facebook and Google modeling were not that far away. So meaning +10, -10% of accuracy, which give a trend. It's not perfect, but confirm kind of what you see. So we still have MMPs on one side. We have our own dashboard with all the stats from the game, and in terms of audience and new installs and paid install we can track, and unattributed organic as well. We can track. And we have as well on your side models from our BI team about predictive LTV, which helps regarding that. So we do our best to kind of, as I meant, as none of these nowadays are fully accurate, try to have an holistic view about that to see if the whole picture works out. And as long as it works out, might be that some channels are a bit less efficient than we would expect, and some maybe a bit more, but it's hard to say to which extent, and try to see if we can still achieve the end of the line and our target.
Yeah, I think it's super important to take like some people are calling it media mix modeling. It's an accurate name. It's not easy to achieve. You need a ton of investments in data science and data scientists to develop that model and people to interpret it, the data ongoingly. But basically, it's just a fancy word, in my opinion, to track just the effect of your activities on high-level KPIs. At the end of the day, revenues. And I liked it when you brought up the idea of like old-fashioned marketing, and it's something that I keep on hearing a lot from marketers and UA people these days. Because in the past, it was almost like finance. I worked as a stock analyst for like 7 years, and it's like you're sitting in front of an Excel allocating portfolios, and it was almost like the role of an investor, like allocating your portfolio based on performance, and you have a ton of data, and that was how the lives of a lot of UA managers looked like. They sat in front of their MMP dashboard, saw, okay, this creative works, this campaign works, and they allocated budgets accordingly. And now you need a lot more creativity with these people because, first of all, just the fact that you can't measure it, that you can measure the ROI of something because the deprecation of the IDFA or whatever, or SK Ad Network, for example, that gives you some sort of signal that is also not accurate. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work. I'll give you an example from the world of B2B marketing. Like I'm in B2B marketing as my profession, and there's a ton of things that are impossible to attribute. For example, this podcast. Of course, this is a marketing activity. And you can't attribute somebody actually going to the StoreMaven website, searching in Google and requesting a demo, for example, because it will appear in the attribution system as coming in from Google search. But what got this person to search for StoreMaven? Maybe they listen to us talking right now. And the same would happen also in mobile marketing. So as you said, investing in brand, investing in things that create an uplift in organic visibility, be it branded search, be it an increase in the ranking. So that I think would be something extremely important in 2022, like getting back to these kind of activities. And I call it like going to rehab. Like the industry was addicted to user level data in a very granular way for measurement. And now we need to go into rehab and try to think like marketers, okay, which creative are we going to use? What's the motivations that these users might have and what will influence them to actually tap on the ad and actually install? So you think that in like looking for like 12 months or so, are you going to invest more in those type of people and then hire for those type of skills and develop creative thinking?
So I would say there's like two parts of it. There is a part about like getting a bit higher and seeing things from further away. And what you've mentioned about B2B, I can as well reflect on my past when I was like marketing on box game. And when you sell box games, they are in retail, in stores, and it's not you selling them. It's indirect. You have no clue who is buying it. And what's important is that you expect certain amount of revenue from the whole sales of your game. And from that, you take a cut that becomes your marketing budget. And then there's like provision for sales, for promotion, and things like that. But basically, everything is like structured in a way that there is the margin, and then the rest is like fragmented in operation to make it happen. So it is a mix of that on one side, which is more of my side about taking a bit further away and trying to organize things with my teams to have as well more diversification of activities with like bringing back other things like PR, brands, communication, actions, social media management, and all those things that helps you diluting as well the risk on one side. And on the other side, if we come back to user acquisition, it is about trying to find ways to get back some kind of controls, because we have been pushed so much away from both the networks with their algorithm, less targeting, less deep information, less lookalike, less custom audience, no retargeting, all those things. We have lost that. On the other side, we have lost IDFA, so we don't know exactly after either. But I can take like some example of campaign. You do a campaign and say, you know what, I target broadly. I have a broad product. I target broadly people in US like 18 to 60 years old, male and female, doesn't matter, who like mobile games, for example, and say, I target broadly for a product. I put like 5 different assets that are somehow very similar, just like displaying your product, your USP, very simple. And out of that, you have a campaign. And from the result with a certain budget, you will have like 3 or 4 assets with like the CPM of $50. And then you have one with $20 and you have no clue why. You have absolutely no clue. So one of the trend currently is more about trying to do more diversified and really in-depth messaging in your asset to push the algorithm to segment the audience for you by saying, you know what, if I take like a DJ mix, for example, which is a DJ mixing app, you can say, okay, in terms of DJ and music, there's many different music being mixed. There are like house and disco that are more old school. You can have like rap and BRB or RB&B that is more like up to date. You can have electronic or even like old style dance, tectonic and stuff like that. You have different ways. And you can say, okay, house disco maybe a bit older people. So if I go and emphasize that, it's likely the algorithm will go for those people because it will be the one reacting to that. If you go like R&B, hip hop and stuff like that, much younger people. So you just keep your broad targeting and try to force the algorithm to identify those people because they will be the one in their database interacting with it. And maybe, of course, some of people not from your the target audience that you try to force with your asset might react to it being like, oh, I never thought I could mix rap. I never thought of it because I don't use that music or listen to it. But it might be fun to mix it with my usual music and try to make it match and make something cool. So it can still work with a surprise. But that's kind of the trend recently, and we are like planning a few tests with that. But yeah, basically it's more as well, I would say in terms of structuration, it's more of thinking further and being a bit deeper into, before it was more, let's say pragmatic. Coming is like you do campaigns, you do assessment, you do targeting, and it was the data replying for you. Now it's more about you thinking and preparing and say, these are the audience I think I can have, these are the kind of prospect I think I can attract, and who are they? How can I commit to them? And I think it's more about bringing back kind of more traditional marketing into performance marketing, because it's harder to do performance marketing as it was, because it's hard to measure where the performance is coming from. It's more about bringing more heuristic things into it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I think that it's also, I'm hearing it from a lot of UA folks, like that creative becomes your new targeting tool. I think even Facebook, by the way, they released a report. I think it was called The Big Catch. And they admitted in that report that they said, listen, like I'm rephrasing their language there, but we're screwed and you're screwed. You can't target anymore lookalike audiences and just forget about what you used to do. It's not going to work anymore. We're Facebook and we're telling you that. Later on, they also issued like, it was like a press release or something for investors saying like, listen, we underestimated how bad it's going to be. And then in that report, they said, but we have an alternative. You're just going to target in a very broad way. and you'll give us creatives with certain motivations, aiming for certain audiences. And trust us, the algorithm will find that audience within that very broad group, let's say the entire US, the entire US. And they'll find the right group, the right audience, and they'll serve the ad more to them. And this way you can create funnels. And then now a lot of people are talking about these funnels also leading. Now Apple's turn is to give you something back from, like they took something away, but they gave you something back, which is custom product pages. So if you have a creative that talks about, techno music for that DJ app, you can create a page that is just about that, because it doesn't make sense if somebody would see the techno ad and then go to a page that talks about pop or something that he doesn't like. Are you going to leverage custom product pages for your campaigns?
Yes.
Is that in your plan?
Yeah, for iOS 15, yes, definitely. But that will be a bit complex in the way that, you will definitely need. It is still very holistic way of seeing is like saying, okay, if I have a product, I think there's like 3 big hook for 3 big audience that I can define was like the right way and making it as a clear funnel. Then of course you will be able to use this custom page to say, okay, we do a full funnel about rap, for example, because it's a big trend of things being mixed a lot by young people. Currently, it is a big thing with dubstep and all the sub style of that. And then you can have for the people maybe house and things like that, and something in the middle makes sense. After it's as well, it can be seen like that about like the product USP or like product content, or then I think there will be as well interest in trying to see the emotional driver and saying, why would they use that? Do they mix for themselves because they like mixing and they like kind of learning, like you would learn an instrument and play an instrument for yourself because you like it? Do they do that to share with friends? And like they do it to share in the end and do mix and share music as you can share any hobby. Or do they do that just because it's a challenge for them? There are like many things you can see, or because if they want to be very great at it and make a job out of it. There are like different emotional driver of the end. And then after it's about serving those funnel of emotional hook and trying to serve it. But I would say there's a lot of possibilities, and hopefully, they will align on that, and it will be possible to kind of segment with very clear asset, and then push them to the custom page. And hopefully, in between, you can put some proper deep linking, so you can send as well information to your app that it will propose a funnel focus on that. Meaning, if you emphasize on like rap and hip hop and things like that, and you estimate that they are young, then if they come on your app, then you show and share like content and tracks of that style mainly, and not something totally different and like, well, that's absolutely not what I've joined. So it forces us to kind of complexify the thinking and the preparation behind that, and not knowing, and it will of course require lots of testing, because you never know, as you have no control over the data. You don't know if indeed the audience that will get through that will be the audience you start.
Yeah, for sure. There's a need for a lot of testing, as you said. And I also think, and based, Stormin ran, tests for hundreds of millions of users in the past few years. And the results always surprise you. Like, it's not the hypothesis the hypothesis that you thought would be the correct one is not always the correct one. And just because, for example, you just mentioned a lot of different USPs and a lot of different emotional drivers, could be that the audience that likes rap is connected the most to the sharing feature, because that's the people they are. They like to share. And the techno audience doesn't want to share. They want to do it for their own pleasure. I don't know. So there's so much testing that needs to be done. The connection between the messaging and the ad creative and in the product page to create the best performing funnel, that a lot of testing is needed. And Apple is I think they're going there. And I want to ask you a few things about Apple, what your thoughts are, but they're going there. I mean, with in-app events, they do have deep linking functionality. So everybody that installs through an in-app event, you can configure a deep link and send them to basically to the event. But I think it will actually roll out to all the pages. In testing, they launch it for the default product page, but it's not for custom product page. With Stormen, we're now developing and we're about to release as soon as it will be available a testing product for custom product pages that will, enable all of this testing in a very accurate way. But I think that the way I see it, Apple is going to release just more and more tools for marketers and UA people, because what you can think about the move that they made with the privacy guidelines and this war against Facebook and really weakening Facebook as an ad network is basically them saying, we want to be the place where users discover apps. We don't like the fact that the majority of people in the world discovered apps through Facebook and on Google's portfolio of assets. We want to be that place. So they weakened everybody. They really strengthened search ads that still has attribution in a very accurate way. Kind of accurate way. And I think because of that, they'll release more and more tools to make marketing and user acquisition better on the store. And I have some crazy idea that might be right, that Apple will develop into a very large ad network in the next few years. Because the only missing part there is that they don't have inventory. All they have is search ads that is limited to the number of searches people make in the App Store. But I don't think it's far-fetched to imagine that Apple will offer to developers, they don't even need an SDK, they just need to offer to developers the ability to show Apple ads within an app and monetize that way. And it's privacy by design, and it's approved by Apple. And then they get a huge amount of inventory. And there's no fraud, or very limited fraud, because it's Apple. What do you think about the direction that Apple is taking? Where do you see all of this going?
I would say that's possible. That makes sense. The other things I see is as well, if you want to reflect, you can think about the GDPR about in Europe protecting privacy. And since they have said that, and you have, of course, the CCPA in California, but since we have that now, it was supposed to protect your data and everything cool about cookies and stuff. But now, whenever you open a website, you have to give 2 or 3 consents about saying, yeah, I want to see that. I want to give my cookies. If I don't want to give my cookies, and there's a whole list of all the cookies, and you have to click.
Yeah.
When you just want to see an article, it gets very painful. Of course, for website, you go often on that. You just do it once, that's fine. But for others, or if you ever go there with another computer, incognito mode or whatever, yeah, you go again. And I think it's about that. A bit of that is that saving privacy and things like that, great. And I totally agree with the user experience it can create and the kind of safety it generates. That's fine. But on the other side, if we go back 15, 20 years ago in terms of web, where there were no targeting, it was all about pop-ups, very intrusive,
very aggressive
advertising, and everything was very intrusive, and you were just mentally blocking. And after we had the saviors, they had blocked. Before that, every time you were opening, you were like, oh no, I have to click to close, to ignore all the flashy things. It was horrible, and it was very, very intrusive, and you were sure about the content you were looking for. And then we had improvement, but going more about targeting, understanding the people, trying to create funnel, and then it was omni-channel, just each channel being very targeted, and then omni-channel after with DMPs and things like that, where it was no matter the place, we had a similar funnel for the people to navigate through according to what they were doing. The thing is that with all the privacy things, in terms of experience for the user, every time we go backward and go back into something, you're okay, then what else? You need to be aggressive. You need to go back into fake, into trying to attract whatever interest you have, because you have no clue who you are addressing with. So you just go with whatever works, no matter what, because you have no choice. You need performance, and you need to grow, and you need to drive benefits. And not everybody has the same amount of ethic And especially in mobile, because in mobile, there's a lot of small companies and actors. It's not like big brands that can't afford doing that because it would hurt the brand. Most of the mobile actor and even mobile users are not much looking after the publisher. They just look at the title itself. They don't make like link in between, which would be very different from like gaming, Ubisoft game. All the gamers, they do. They are games from Ubisoft. So if they do something, they will remember it and they will pay after no matter what. Well, if there's a publisher doing something very bad, very deceptive, the people will like install and uninstall. And if there are some other games, they won't remember it was this publisher behind it. So it kind of, unfortunately, something that is supposed to bring benefits to their user is as well generated a large drawback that is very negative. So I think they are trying to bring the publishers and the marketers behind that to try to be a bit smarter about, instead of proposing the data, propose a funnel and do something indirect to propose back to those users a funnel they will like and that will be relevant to them and that will answer to the user kind of needs or the needs you create and aspiration. As well, the fact that the stores, no matter if it's Google Play or Apple, they need as well to sustain their credibility as a platform and keep the trust of the users. Because else, for Apple, it's a bit more complex, but for Android, you have also stores. There's many other ways to get the games or the apps through applications and things like that. So people can find other way to do it. It requires a bit more of effort, but you can do it. And if they lose the credibility, there's a big risk about that because people won't trust paying it. And the publisher will pay or developers will pay from it because there's at the moment a big trust of the users, especially on iOS, about using the payment service of Apple, using the Apple stores, and all of those things. It generates trust and they pay voluntarily, knowing that they can trust it, they can cancel it, they have control over their things. But if one day their stores is not that relevant or not that trustable anymore because it doesn't propose content that please the people or reply to their needs or their wishes, then there will be big drawbacks for them. So there's always a risk about the change and about if you, or let's say, if they're just proposing content, they are not like developing content, they propose other content. They're kind of an entertainment platform collecting all the content. And if one day, similarly to a media, like any newspaper or anything like that, if one day the content is not relevant, people don't come anymore. And so it's not like from one day to another, anything that will affect negatively will diminish their business.
Yeah, definitely. They'll have, the funny thing about it is that this entire move is happening, but they crowned, I'm talking about Apple, they crowned themselves as, it's okay for us to track user data. Users have a contract with Apple when they buy an iPhone. So we'll keep all the data. It's still user level. But we won't allow you to, we won't trust you to read that data. But we have it. And then, for example, search ads is possible because search ads is supposed to be very targeted. Of course, it's contextual because of the searches, but thinking about when they expand their inventory. But definitely it has to come back in some form, like targeted advertisement. I agree with you that the world doesn't want, I think Eric Seufert even said it once, that personalized ads are a public good. Like you don't want to, like we all remember when we were kids, we saw crazy ads that had nothing to do with us, like on TV, on in the newspaper. That's where you would see ads, and it wasn't in the digital world. And 99.99% of those ads were not relevant for you. I remember as a kid thinking to myself, listen, why ads even work? Like, there's no way I'm going to buy these kind of things. I have no interest in that. Then I grew up and I started buying things from ad because I was just thinking about new shoes and I saw an ad for the shoes that I wanted. But I'm sure that Apple apparently is in the prime position to solve that, but they'll find like the middle ground between extremely targeted ads by advertisers that you don't want to be targeted by, to that very broad situation, like when we were kids and nothing was almost targeted. Something will have to emerge during the middle. But cool. We're running out of time a bit, so I just want to ask you 3 last questions that we ask all guests. So, and one of them I'll rephrase because I think you're very forward thinking. So a lot of UA people that are listening to this episode will enjoy a tip. Like, what do you recommend them to be focusing on? If it's like one thing they should be focusing on when they start their planning for 2022.
If it's about QA, I would definitely suggest to focus on creative and creative testing. There have been lots of good articles and white papers around that because it is basically the last bit you are controlling. It is definitely creative. And part of that, I would say, playables a lot, especially if you have relevancy to go on that network, like Unity, Applovin, and all of these. Because if you have, of course, games, obviously, because there are gaming channels, but as well if you have gamified apps, so that are a bit like using gamification, levels, content, things you unlock, tutorials, so all those values from games, it works very well. And their audience, it's a few months or a few years ago, they were very, very game centric and making advertisements for apps was absolutely not working. It has changed now. So I would say, yeah, definitely playables is a turn point at the moment for anything that is kind of entertainment or services and pretty clear, and gamified is even better. And yeah, everything is around creative and trying to segment your audience, understand your audience better, as you don't have that data anymore that accessible even on Facebook and all those analytics disappeared. You have to understand your audience to be able to serve them. And it's more, well, before it was a direct way. You had data and you were able to verify it. Now it's indirect. It's about putting hypotheses about funnel, who you think they are, putting those funnel in place and see if it will work. You might be wrong. Doesn't matter. It is learning if you are wrong, but it is about, I would say, everything at the moment. And I think 2022 will be about resilience and being able to survive that and fail a lot, definitely fail a lot. That's how you learn. And that's how you get closer to success.
Words of wisdom. And we have another question about content recommendations. Like, who do you recommend folks to read? Like, who do you read to stay on top of what's happening in the industry? Like, news, yeah.
Yeah, in my case, I am subscribed to most of the mailing list for like all the MMPs because they all have good insight. Services like StoreMaven for everything touching ASO, because there's a bunch of actors in that regard, and they do lots of webinars and lots of white paper. You have as well all the information you can get from the channels themselves, like Facebook, Google's. They do very good papers about analysis around the market, the trend, and things like that. Definitely helps a lot. And then you have I do like as well all the publication. So I'll do a bit of advertisement for consumer acquisition, which is a very big media. They do media buying, but they do as well lots of creative work, and they do amazing white papers, to be honest, about how you can measure creative performance and how you can segment with creative. So for you, it's definitely a big one. And then, of course, if you are more interested regarding games and game design and things like that, you have the Constructor of Fun. That is definitely a very
amazing
one with lots of analysis, and even there's good papers about like ad flow, retention through ads, everything is regarding what you can put in your apps or game that will improve your KPIs. And of course, it is mainly, I would say, for apps or game developers and game designers and things like that. But even for, let's say, marketers, business, monetization, and things like that, there's lots of good insight that will help you improve your flow and improve the performance of your products.
Great. That's gold right there. And last question is, and I have a feeling that you'll answer differently because you're the second guest in a row from France. But what's your favorite flavor of pancake?
I would say I'm not much into pancakes, even if I love
I knew it.
with maple syrup, but I have to defend my culture and say crepes is better.
Crepes is, yeah, the previous guest.
Anyway, pancakes still works, and my kids love that. So
yeah, the previous guest from Once Dating, he said that he likes a crepe with brown sugar, butter, and lemon, which I tried, and it's amazing. So yeah.
Oh really? No, I'm more simple. It's like you get like jam, strawberry or all sorts of jams.
Cool.
Love the one of chestnut.
Awesome.
Chestnut jam is amazing. But maple syrup always work, even if it's not French. It's still done by part of French-speaking people, so it's all right.
Cool. So thank you very much, Raphaël, for doing this. It was a pleasure. Lots of fun.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. It was a pleasure as well.
And I'll speak to you soon, man.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
And that was Mobile Growth and Pancakes. To find out more about StoreMaven and how we can improve App Store performance, visit storemaven.com. And then make sure to search for Mobile Growth and Pancakes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at StoreMaven, thanks for listening.